All right, how's everybody doing? This is the Comic Samurai. I want to welcome you to my next video, and tonight we're going to be looking at comic book UPC boxes. So let's go ahead and jump right in. First up, we got this Wolverine Limited Series number 2, and this is an example of a newsstand edition. That is where they had this barcode in the UPC box there, and I'll compare that with the direct market version. Now this one has an image in that UPC box, and this is very typical of what Marvel did at that time in their UPC boxes. Next up we got Uncanny X-Men number 129, and this is an example of the late 70s version of a direct market one. They had the UPC code there, and they just put a black diagonal line across that barcode, and that is how they designated a direct market version of that comic. Next up we got the Incredible Hulk number 389, and this one celebrated the Fantastic Four's 30th anniversary. And Marvel could do whatever they wanted in that box there when it wasn't a newsstand edition, when they didn't have to put that barcode in. Next up we got the Incredible Hulk number 384, and this is when Marvel was celebrating Captain America's 50th anniversary there, and they wanted to promote it a little bit in that UPC box. Next up we got Batman number 368, and this is what DC was doing at the time. Again, some promotional, just advertising. They used that space. Next up we got Batman number 410, and this was my favorite little bit of promotion that DC used at this time, and it was "Who watches the Watchmen?" There was something about that saying that really did capture my imagination. What does that mean exactly? Who watches the Watchmen? Next up we got Batman number 400, and this one just uses an image there, that bat signal. I really do like that one. Sometimes it didn't matter if it was a UPC or a direct sales version, but on this one I did prefer the image, and typically I do prefer an image in that UPC box, the direct version. Next up we got the X-Men number 224, and whenever Marvel had a big event at this time period, they promoted in the direct sales box there, and this one was the Fall of the Mutants, a good storyline that ran through most of the X titles at that time. Next up we got Iron Man number 221, and I liked when they did promotional things that wasn't advertising to make money. It was for a benefit, a charity or something like that. And this one was to promote literacy. I really did like that use of the UPC image. Next up we got Savage Dragon number 1, and this is the direct sales version. Sometimes they didn't have a UPC box at all on the direct sales version, and when they had a newsstand version, they just kind of had to cover up some of the image with a barcode there. And it's funny that I much prefer these direct sales ones. Were printed on different paper, and sometimes they didn't have the promotional stuff. Like this one has a poster in, but the newsstand does not. Next up we got Classic X-Men number 39, and this is a version where they had a UPC symbol there, and you can see that they didn't just delete the box there, but they put the image on it, and you can see that there's a line going across that figure in the background there. So there was a UPC box there. It was present. They just chose to continue the image there, and I much prefer this direct sales version that doesn't have some of the image hidden by that UPC symbol. Next up we got Batman number 427, and this one used a little bit of text in the UPC box. This bottom message here to check the back for a phone number, and you could vote on whether or not you wanted Jason Todd, the second Robin, to live or die. This text here was just deleted. It was a UPC code. Anyway, it's kind of an interesting thing that they put type on some of those UPC boxes. Next up we got Silver Surfer number 20. And I like this little funny image that they had, putting a surfboard over the UPC code there. It is just kind of an interesting use of getting creative with that UPC box. Next up we got Guardians of the Galaxy number 25. And this is what I really wanted to focus on, when artists would take the opportunity to put a little bit of a thumbnail piece of art in that UPC box. And that's just kind of a creative one there. Next up we got Guardians of the Galaxy number 1. And this is the only example that I could find of a color image in the UPC box. Typically it was black and white, but this is the only one where they did that symbol of the Guardians of the Galaxy in color, because the newsstands were black and white UPC codes on that one. Next up we got X Factor number 32, and this is a Stephen Lytle cover, and it looks like a Stephen Lytle image in the thumbnail there, but I do like this one. It did fit, and you get a taste for the artist. It's just a little bit of extra art, and it was fun getting those direct market ones. Next up, we got Spider-Man number 15, and this is Eric Larson's version of a little thumbnail there. You get that little extra image of that character in the corner there, and I do like his take on that character. Next up, we got Iron Man number 8. Now, this is Walter Simonson's version of a little UPC box art there, and it's a weird image, like this weird turtle or frog or something, a lizard face there. It has to do with the story there, but it is just kind of a funny little image that Walter decided to include. Next up, we got Fantastic Four number 341, and again, Walter Simonson. He loved to get creative and just do fun images in those UPC boxes. He was kind of continuing a trend that had started, but he did it pretty well. Next up, we got Thor number 352, and I liked Simonson's run on this series, and a lot of times he'd put meow meow, Thor's hammer, in the corner there. That's how I always said it. I don't know. It's kind of fun to see how everybody pronounces Thor's hammer's name. I say meow meow. Next up, we got 339 of the Fantastic Four, and this was an interesting version of the blocky thing done by Walter Simonson. And I love that version because you get to compare it to this number 354, where Walter Simonson did his version of the spiky thing. Now, that was my favorite iteration of Ben Grimm's mutation into the Thing. I loved when he was spiky. He was stronger, and he retained his intelligence, and I loved that. Next up, we got Iron Man number 231, and this is a Bob Layton image here, and I do like the shell head's image there in the bottom. You just get that little bit. It just adds a little bit of flavor, a little bit of spice to those covers, and I like it. Next up, we got X-Men number 273, and this is Jim Lee's try at a little interesting thumbnail in the corner there, and I do like this one. That's such an interesting silhouette. Artists love to use that trope of the arching legs. Next up, we got Fantastic Four number 348, and Arthur Adams took every opportunity to fill those covers with imaginative imagery. And this one is no exception. You get the visage of the Mole Man there, the villain that they're fighting. What a great idea. Have the heroes, the new group there, and the villain that they're fighting in the thumbnail in the UPC box. Next up, we got Long Shot number 1. Now, this was a 6-issue limited series, and Art Adams tried to do kind of a story in the UPC boxes. You start out with this friendly-looking friend, dog-like creature that Longshot kind of befriends at the beginning, and as you go through it, he morphs. But this issue number 2 didn't continue it, and it's a shame. I really wish that every issue would have continued that storyline. But in issue number 3 here, it does continue it, and you get to see that that is not such a friendly face on that dog-like character anymore. And in this number 4, he's really morphing into like a villainous, like, he's not a friend. He might be the villain of the story. And this number 5 shows his final transformation into a true villain, animalistic beast that Longshot is going to have to contend with. That is a fun one. And then he did do issue number 6 here, but they didn't do the ultimate bad guy there. They just used the Spider-Man typical emblem there. Next up, we got Marvel Comics Presents number 32, and everyone knows they were waiting for it, but Todd McFarlane is the king of UPC box art. And he succeeded in creating an attractive, beautiful, good to look at, easy on the eyes image of Kitty Pryde. And it was the first time I had ever looked at an image of that character and said, oh, the costume works, her design works. It was appealing to me. The Chris Claremont, John Byrne's version, God bless him, it just didn't connect with me for some reason. It just wasn't appealing to the eye, but Todd McFarlane figured it out. Next up, we got The Amazing Spider-Man number 325, and Todd's whole run on this series had so many good things. He had hidden spiders in it. He'd always put a number on his signature, and that's how many hidden spiders were on the cover. But he also did thumbnail art in the UPC area, and it's beautiful. This take on the Red Skull is my favorite. I love it. Next up, we got The Amazing Spider-Man number 324, and this is one of my favorite images of Sabretooth here on the cover, where that motion of the fringes on his cuffs there, I love it. His hair, it's spinning in motion. But this little added image of Sabretooth there, it's just that little bit of extra spice that really does set it off. I much prefer the direct sales version of that comic book. Next up, we got Amazing Spider-Man number 328. And McFarlane's last issue on this series went out with a bang. I loved it. And you get an extra little glimpse at the Incredible Hulk. And it's fitting because Todd McFarlane worked on the Incredible Hulk before this run. So he really had that character down. And he just wanted to show off a little bit more. All right, next up we got Classic X-Men number 30, and I always say that humor goes a long ways with me, and this is one of the funniest comic book covers I have ever seen. I love the ferocity and the gruesomeness of this image of Wolverine with the Hulk's head on his claws, and upon closer inspection, you'll notice that the Hulk is just a robot. It's some kind of a cyborg that Arcade constructed. But what really gets me is in the thumbnail there's that image of Banshee with a screwdriver like, well, should we try to fix it? And the reactions in the background of Colossus and Nightcrawler like horrified of, oh, Wolverine killed the Hulk. But Sean's there like, no, we could fix it if we wanted to. He's got a screwdriver. I just love this cover. What a fun one. All right, two left. Next up, we got Captain America Annual 8. And this is one of my favorite comic book covers of all time. It'll always be in my top 3. I love this Mike Zeck image. And it is only complemented by that thumbnail image that is kind of trying to promote literacy. And it's the image of a book, and it's kind of an M.C. Escher take on it, where the book transforms into a bird and takes flight. And that metaphor has always been special to me. I do like that, where you can look at a comic book and it's just printing, color, etching, drawings, whatever. But when you bring it all together, the gestalt of it, the sum of the parts is so much greater as a whole. It just really does add to something special that it wasn't before. It sparks that imagination, and this is the perfect UPC art on the cover of this comic book. I absolutely love it. I want to wrap it up with a funny story about this Incredible Hulk number 345. I bought a copy of this comic book from a wholesaler when I was a kid. And it was a direct market one, but it had a UPC sticker over it. The company that was selling it, the business, I needed a barcode on it, so they put a sticker over it. And I didn't know. I just thought it was a newsstand version. I got home and I was like, oh, there's a sticker. And I peeled that sticker off, and the direct market one has an image of the Incredible Hulk. And I'll put an image up of what the direct market version of this cover looks like. But when I peeled that sticker off, it left a little bit of the sticky on the cover. And it was like, it always bothered me. You could see it. I couldn't clean it off. I tried and it would just smear it. And I just said, finally, I don't want this comic anymore. So I gave it away just because of that sticky on the cover. And I got myself a newsstand just because every time I looked at the direct sales version, it reminded me of that sticky glue. And this one, while it reminds me, it's not so bad. I can get away with it. And this is one of my favorite comic book covers. Well, thank you for joining me as we looked at UPC art and compared and contrasted the newsstand and the direct market versions. Let me know what your favorite thumbnail art in those UPC boxes is. But thanks again and have a great night.